When astronomers first recorded the 33rd object named Tri-I Atlas in July 2025, the world barely noticed. In the end, it was just another interstellar traveler, another piece of space debris wandering through the boundless void between the stars. The third object of this kind, seemingly just a silent traveler passing through the solar system on a one-way journey. However, the James Webb Telescope, probably the most powerful tool humanity has ever created for observing space, captured it, and what it saw changed everything. It was not just an icy rock warmed by the sun. Deep inside the Atlas Mountains, something glowed, not randomly, but rhythmically, like a pulse, like a heartbeat. And with each passing day, what started as strange curiosity became increasingly alarming. Brightness levels exceeded predictions. The object began to emit thermal energy from within, rather than from its solar surface, followed by signals, radio waves repeating with human precision. And finally, the course changed. The object deviated deliberately. It was not just a rock on a passive path. It was an object that acted with intent and perhaps awareness. Something was inside the Tri-I Atlas, and the James Webb Telescope had just confirmed it was alive. At first, it was just a statistical anomaly, a bright dot among many in the infrared image of the Webb telescope. But as the team studied the data from the NIRSpec instrument, one anomaly could not be ignored. The 3 Atlas moons did not behave like any other objects in space. Typical interstellar guests dim and brighten irregularly, rotating, ejecting material, or unevenly reflecting sunlight from icy surfaces. But Tri-I Atlas did not show such variability. Its brightness remained ominously constant. Even more alarming was that the object emitted a concentrated glow from its core, like a miniature furnace, pulsing at precise intervals. Every 4 hours, the heat rose and faded in a perfectly calibrated cycle, reminiscent of a biological rhythm. This pattern was too precise to be geological. It did not correspond to rotation, solar wind, or any known natural process. It emanated from the depths of the object, unaffected by the changing angle of sunlight or distance from the sun. Scientists called it a thermal anomaly, but unofficially some began to whisper another word: heartbeat. The pulse was slow, conscious, and mechanical, resonating not like the radiation of a star but like an engine breathing in deep space. Something inside this object generated internal energy, independent of external forces. And those who studied these patterns were faced with a terrifying question: what object can sustain itself in the dark? When the thermal data became impossible to ignore, radio astronomers joined the investigation. Telescopes around the world, from South Africa to California, aimed their receivers at Triangulum Atlas. Days passed, and the data streams were clear. Then a breakthrough occurred. Allen's telescope network detected a weak, narrow band signal, a regular pulse occurring every 4 hours that perfectly matched the heat bursts identified by the Webb. Initially, there were doubts. Was it just noise, an echo, or local interference? But the hours turned into nights, nights into weeks, and the signal remained unchanged. It was stable, precise, and incredibly persistent. The pulse not only existed but also adapted, showing slight variations in accordance with the fluctuations of the solar wind. Several research centers confirmed the same pattern, ruling out equipment errors or man-made sources. The repeatability of the signal proved to be too mathematically pure. Fourier analysis revealed a stable carrier wave with no analogs in nature. It seemed that something on board the 3-dimensional Atlas was not just active, but trying to send a signal. The teams attempted to match the signal with known pulsars, neutron stars, and cosmic background radiation, but each test yielded no positive results. Natural explanations were exhausted. The final test involved sending a simple message back, a series of prime numbers, elements of the periodic table, and basic mathematical constants. 72 hours later, a response arrived. Distorted, faint, but it came, and it was on time. Something hurt us, and something replied. On August 18th, everything changed again. A continuous Webb broadcast captured a sudden glow from a 3-dimensional Atlas, an explosive burst of energy that increased the object's brightness by more than 40% in less than an hour. No comet behaves like this, even during eruptions of vapor or dust, but even more shocking was what followed. The recalibration of the object's trajectory showed a subtle but undeniable course correction. The 3-dimensional Atlas was no longer drifting. It was maneuvering. The change brought him closer to the ecliptic of the solar system, aligning him more precisely with the inner planets. Orbital simulators of the European Space Agency, led by Marco Macelli, conducted simulations again, trying to explain the maneuver through gas expulsion or other physical processes. But the mathematical data did not match. The acceleration needed for such a change was far greater than any natural emission could produce. Even more astonishingly, the surge and course change occurred simultaneously, as if one triggered the other. No known comet, asteroid, or interstellar object has ever changed its trajectory on its own, not with intention. If something aboard the three-dimensional atlas reacted to us, to our signal, to our instruments, to our presence, then it was no longer a simple observation. It was a meeting. And what controlled this object had just taken its first step. After a surge and a change in trajectory, attention shifted to the composition of the object. Spectroscopic analysis was accelerated at all major observatories. A team from Johns Hopkins, led by Carrie Lee, began analyzing every wavelength the Webb could provide. What they discovered deepened the mystery tenfold. Although familiar elements such as water ice, carbon dioxide, and carbon were found in the comet, they were covered by absorption lines previously unrecorded in nature. Some of them pointed to the presence of metal alloys, including rare earth elements used in advanced manufacturing on Earth. Others hinted at quantum materials, theoretically described in laboratories but never observed outside the realms of speculative physics. These were not random cosmic connections. They were constructed, organized at the molecular level to behave differently than natural materials. Certain reflections in the infrared spectrum mimic the optical profiles of metamaterials designed to bend light, similar to those used in stealth technologies. In short, an object called Three Eyes of Atlas was not just active. It did not merely react. It was created with a level of precision surpassing anything humanity had ever produced. If the materials are synthetic and the signals intentional, the question is no longer what the Three Eyes of Atlas is. The question now is who created it, and why is it here? While the spectrometric analysis was ongoing, researchers from the California Institute of Technology's Deep Space Laboratory began experiments with passive mapping of signals, effectively listening to the Three Eyes of Atlas at multiple wavelengths simultaneously to detect any structural resonance. What they discovered shook the scientific community to its core. The object emitted not only radio pulses, but its entire mass acted as a resonant chamber. Every few hours, a low-frequency rumble echoed in the X-range and microwaves, returning to Earth with a delay too consistent to be random. More alarming was the fact that when the signal was reversed, slowed down, and overlaid on a sonogram of human speech, it formed patterns strangely resembling a language, not any known language, but structured and comprehensible, as if something inside the Three Eyes of Atlas was imitating communication, or worse, listening and learning. Some analysts believe that the object not only reacts to signals but adapts, aligning its parameters with the vibrational logic of human transmission, possibly preparing to speak in a way we can finally understand. But others fear a more terrifying alternative. What we hear may not be the object itself, but something within it, awakening, preparing to emerge. A new round of infrared imaging from the James Webb Space Telescope revealed astonishing cosmic phenomena, technologies we only dreamed of in theoretical physics. Even more alarming was the realization that the dimensions of the spiral follow the perfect golden ratio, not just once, but recursively, at 3 different scales. This pattern manifests in nature, in living organisms, DNA spirals, galaxies, nautilus shells, but has never been found in the cold rocks of the depths of space. It is a blueprint of organic intelligence, a fractal imprint, something we associate with design rather than chaos. And if a golden spiral rotates in the heart of this object, then it is not just alive. Perhaps it is self-aware. Less than a week after the spiral was discovered, a sharp decrease in the object's brightness was recorded, initially perceived as a shadow from the rotation. But the high-contrast shot from the Webb Observatory revealed something unprecedented. A section of the Three-Eyed Atlas's surface shifted, not shattered or cracked, but moved. A rectangular panel, smooth and reflective, retracted, revealing a dark cavity inside. No natural comet or asteroid ever displayed mechanical movement. The refuge was clean, symmetrical, and constant. In the new cavity, infrared scans detected neither debris, nor gas, nor thermal chaos. Instead, there was stability, a space created to remain cold and dark, like a chamber or a cradle. The scientists were divided in their opinions. Is it a release vent, a mass of sensors, a hatch, Whatever it is, it opens towards the Earth. And while the object continued its path, this opening remained aimed at our planet, like an eye, not passive, not observing, but focused. And inside this cavity, a secondary pulse began, differing in tone, slower but stronger. A second heartbeat, something else awakened inside. As if that was not enough, NASA's Ames Research Center made one last discovery that changed everything. Using advanced data correlation between the readings of the James Webb Telescope and terrestrial spectral databases, they identified trace compounds in the emission spectrum of the object that matched earthly biopolymers. These are not exactly DNA, but molecules so similar in structure and functionality that they behaved like synthetic analogs of organic tissue, hybrid materials grown in a laboratory, created to imitate life. These polymers were not passive. They reacted to sunlight, changing shape on a molecular level, indicating programmability like in living chains. We had just begun experiments with this on Earth in biotechnology labs, but the three-eyed atlas was created using this technology. The boundaries between biology and engineering are completely blurred within this object. It is not alive in the way we understand life, nor is it a machine in the order we define technology. It is both, or perhaps something greater than both concepts. Vessel, seed, being, a message encoded in form. And if this message awakens now, the question is no longer what is inside, but what will happen when it comes out. It has now become clear that the three-eyed atlas was not a random traveler, but then came the most unsettling revelation. Using historical data on gravitational lensing combined with recent motion analysis, a group of independent physicists noticed a subtle but undeniable pattern. The current trajectory of the object turned out to be non-unique. In fact, a nearly identical path had already been recorded earlier, but not by human tools, rather by ancient geological formations, on Mars, on Europa, even on Earth. Megastructures like the pyramids of Giza, the Nazca Lines, and Martian ridges, long thought to be random or natural, revealed mathematical alignments pointing to a precise vector, now followed by an object known as the three-eyed atlas. This was no coincidence. It seemed that the object had passed this way before, and its arrival was recorded in stone by long-gone civilizations, or perhaps by those that had manipulated for a long time. Scholars began to speak of gravitational memory, the idea that the space-time continuum itself remembers movement. But if this object was here before, then it is not just visiting, it is returning. And the truly important question is what happened last time. In a desperate attempt to understand the nature of the object, scientists conducted the final experiment. They used the Kim Massif in Canada to transmit a broadband signal of silence towards the Three Eyes Atlas, a method not for conversation, but for seeking a response from the vacuum. This is a method that is supposed to reveal artificial voids, like rooms behind walls in archaeological excavations, but on a cosmic level. When the signal reached the object, the result was shocking. For 6.3 of a second, Three-Eyed Atlas absorbed all detectable frequencies, returning neither a trace, neither reflection nor refraction, only pure silence. Then, at the 7th second, he emitted a single response pulse that exactly matched the 1977 anomaly known as the WOW signal, once considered the strongest candidate for contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. The consequences were devastating. Either the object captured this signal through time and intentionally reproduced it, or it was the original source of transmission. Suddenly, what we considered a cold traveler became a possible point of contact, a ghost reproducing its own message. But if the Three-Eyed Atlas was a transmitter, then who was the presumed receiver? As fear grew among those closest to the data, an unofficial working group was formed, consisting of astrophysicists, linguists, exobiologists, and philosophers. Their conclusions, though unpublished, leaked into the scientific underground. The models encoded in the object's impulses were not random. They followed a symbolic structure known as recursive universal grammar, a system of meanings that transcends language, mathematics, and biology. Essentially, it was a template for the intellect. More troubling was that this template exhibited signs of emerging self-reference. In simpler terms, it was not just communicating. It was talking about itself. Researchers believe that the Three-Eyed Atlas may contain a non-human consciousness embedded in geometry, light, and resonance. The object is not just alive, it may be aware of us, not only because we observe it, but also because it has already taken us into account in its design. As if his journey through our solar system was always meant to elicit recognition not from us, but from within himself, as if he had returned home. Then the final turn occurred. Observatories around the world began reporting something even more unexpected. Subtle changes in the positions of stars, which were minor, not immediately noticeable, but real. The established stars that guide everything from GPS satellites to ancient navigators had shifted by fractions of angular seconds. Too little to affect daily life, but enough to cause concern in all astrophysical models. When the distortions were compared, they converged in a way that distorted time signatures near 3 ocular atlases. A team from the University of Tokyo conducted predictive simulations and reached a frightening conclusion. The object not only distorts light or gravity, but subtly bends the fabric of space-time around it, enough to suggest localized manipulation of reality. The only known entities capable of such a thing are black holes, but the three-eyed atlas does not absorb. It controls, rewriting the sky, not as a side effect but as a message written in the stars. Something emerges that rewrites not only what we know about space, but also how space has always viewed us. As data from 3 ocular atlases continued to arrive, the team at CERN attempted a radical approach. They passed the object's signals through a harmonic resonance model, typically used for predicting quantum decoherence in particle collisions. What resulted amazed everyone. The emissions of the object created perfect harmonic structures when matched in a multidimensional phase space, which occurs only in finely tuned physical systems like musical instruments or atomic clocks. But then, during the session of September 2nd, the signal collapsed into chaotic noise, only to reform into a completely new harmonic mode a few seconds later. It was not a failure. It was a modulation, as if the object detected analysis and responded by changing its internal structure to avoid pattern recognition. This level of awareness is not just reactive. It is adaptive, like a living intelligence protecting its main secrets. The researchers began to call this moment the veil, as it was the first indication that the 3 ocular atlases were not merely being observed. It determines that we can see. When the speed and trajectory of the object were clarified, something deeply unsettling emerged. According to orbital mechanics and known astrophysical constraints, 3 ocular atlases were to appear from the region of interstellar space, nearly 100 light-years away from us. Nevertheless, based on his current speed and trajectory, it would take him over 500,000 years to get here, unless he accelerated at some point. However, there were no signs of deceleration upon entering the solar system, neither a discovered source of fuel nor a trace indicating movement. Nothing. The mathematics in this case was impossible unless time itself had changed. A small group of scientists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology proposed a bold theory. Perhaps the 3 eyes of the atlas used time dilation to traverse space faster than the speed of light, circumventing the theory of relativity. This would mean that he was not just a guest from another star system, but a time traveler who could cross time as easily as distance. And if he had done this before, he might have seen civilizations rise and fall, including our own. One of the most unexpected discoveries came not from a scientist, but from an artist. Lucille Fenn, a data sculptor, visualized astronomical data using 3D graphics algorithms. When she constructed the structural geometry of the object's internal resonant frequency based on previous harmonic data, she noticed something that made her freeze. A repeating geometric pattern resembling a face, not human, but symmetrical, elongated, and deeply alien. At first, her work was dismissed as a parody, our tendency to see patterns where none exist. However, further analysis confirmed that the resonant data had indeed intentionally encoded this pattern, repeating at several scales. The object conveyed form, symbolic identity, face, mind, presence. Whether it was a creator, pilot, or representation of the mind within, no one could say. But now the message was no longer mathematical or mechanical. It became visual, emotional. It tried to be recognized, while the face looked back in response. In a final attempt to understand the object, the James Webb team focused all available tools on one area near the spiral core. What they discovered was not a source of heat or a signal, but a region that violated all known laws of reflection. Light entered, but did not return. Not absorption, but retention. It was as if this area functioned like a light trap, or, worse, like a data repository. When they mapped the surrounding gravitational field, they discovered something even more shocking. The mass density of the object indicated an internal space significantly exceeding its physical volume, like the effect of the TARDIS, where the internal space surpasses the external boundaries. If this was true, the three eyes of the Atlas could contain an archive, not of matter, but of memory, a record, a museum, or perhaps a seed bank of civilizations, encoded in light and time, waiting to awaken. But the archive was sealed, locked by a geometry that no human code could decipher, and perhaps it was never meant to be opened unless we were the key. For centuries, humanity has looked to the night sky, seeking answers about our origins, our place in the universe, and whether we are truly alone. We sent signals, built telescopes, dreamed of visits, but could never imagine that something was already watching us, waiting for us to just look closer. Three Ayatlases did not just randomly end up in our solar system. They arrived with purpose, with rhythm, with memory. They pulsed like a heart and responded like a mind. They changed their course to meet us as if they knew who we were. And now, as they silently move past Mars, still emitting light from within and sending signals that we can barely understand, the question is no longer what they are. The question is what they want, and whether we should have discovered them at all. Is it a probe, a messenger, a relic, or something entirely different, not alive in our understanding, but capable of redefining us? For perhaps three Ayatlas should not have reached Earth. Perhaps Earth was always meant to reach them. And now that we have seen, recognized, and touched them with our machines, one terrifying truth resonates louder than any signals from space. We have already been noticed. And as soon as you are noticed, you cannot return to solitude. If this gives you chills, know that you are not alone. What if the greatest discovery in human history did not come from a signal we sent, but from a silent object already on its way to us? Share your opinion. Do you believe that three Ayatlas are alive, or is it something worse that was created and left behind?